We all are here to attend this program in honor of the World Elder Abuse Awareness. In a world where elders are facing abuse and neglect, this program is an attempt at trying to shine a light on this topic and educate ourselves. In today's program, we will be listening to Dr. Sridhar Vaitheshwaran and Mr. Babu Krishnamoorthy as they speak about the different medical and financial aspects that elders should give attention to and should do to ensure a stable and comfortable lifestyle. Let us begin today's program with a prayer. Kindly rise for the Tamil Thai part.
நீராறும் கடலுடுத்த நிலமடந்தை கெழிலொழுகும் சீராறும் மதனமென திகழ்வரத கண்டனிதில் எக்கணமும் அதில் சிறந்த திராவிடனல் திருநாடும் தக்க சிறு பிறை நுதலும் தரித்தனரும் திலகமுமே திலக வாசனை போல் அனைத்துலகும் இன்பமுற எத்திசையும் புகழ் மணக்க இருந்த பெரும் தமிழனங்கே தமிழனங்கே உன் சீரிழமை திறம்பியந்து செயல் மறந்து வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே.
I would now like to invite Mrs. Poorna Rajan, a licensed clinical psychologist with experience in the field of adult psychotherapy and neurorehabilitation, to talk further about the Dementia Care Foundation.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us this Saturday. I am sure that taking some time off, we're very grateful that you've taken some time off from your schedule to be here with us. So I would just like to talk a little bit about our foundation, the Dementia Care Foundation. It was started in 2019 and it was started as a part of being able to fill in a gap of care for elders as well as in primary focused dementia. And the current room that we're sitting in is where our daycare is run on a regular basis. A few things that me as well as our founder Dr. Gayatri Ananthakrishnan focused on was to help build what is called as sustainable models on care for elderly, because they are, especially people with dementia, there is a level of dependency that is involved, and then there is also a gap in the care continuum. Only a medical model of just medical intervention doesn't seem enough, and that there needs to be a rehabilitative care environment also, and that rehabilitation for a neurological condition such as dementia is more chronic in nature, meaning it's not time defined. We can't predict how much time they will need to be a part of our rehabilitative services. And therefore, one of the questions that we are focusing on answering is how can we build a sustainable model so that they can continue to get the care they need at affordable cost given today's scenario and so on. So with that in thought, we created the Dementia Care Foundation within a hospital where some amount of supportive medical care is always available for the elder, and also it provides them a place where they can socialize and get their cognitive care and rehabilitation as well. Along with the daycare, we also have a shuttle service that's available for elders who would like to have some commute available for them. We are currently operating at a 5-kilometer radius, but we are hoping that as the organization grows, we'll be able to provide longer care as well. And we also have caregiver support services. One of the other stronger aims that we have identified is to help build a stronger community with regards to dementia care. So it's not only for the professionals, but also for the community, so that the elders can continue to live with the dignity and their strengths and weaknesses. And as a part of that program, we also do a lot of awareness programs and of course community outreach models and so on. So to see all of you here gives us a lot of joy and a lot of optimism, and it gives us a lot of hope to continue to do the work that we are doing so far. We have a short clip regarding what we've done since 2019, and I would like to take some time and just play that for you. Thank you very much. And I would like to welcome very key members of today's function and our speakers who have been a huge support to us over these years and have continued to be a reason to move forward despite the pandemic and the various complications that the pandemic brought about as well. So it gives me immense pleasure to welcome these two speakers in today's function, Dr. Sridhar Vaitheshwaran and Mr. Babu Krishnamoorthy. It also gives me immense gratitude to welcome Dr. Muthu Jayaraman, who is the senior nephrologist who has come today and is a part of our program. We have three organizations who are supporting us on a regular basis. One is HelpAge India, the second one being the Probus Club members, as well as the Ties That Bind Foundation, and also of course DemCares, who has been a very strong supporter of our program as well. I'd like to welcome all the other elders as well as members who've taken interest in understanding about dementia and so on. Please feel free to reach out to our team members as well as the speakers at the end of the program to ask any questions that you have about the dementia daycare or with regards to elder mental health and financial related support as well. We encourage a lot of questions. We love questions because of questions we can find answers to a lot of problems, so we'd be happy for you to ask the questions as well. If you have some hesitation on standing up and asking us the questions, we have like volunteers who are around, so please write down your questions and then we will take some time and answer every one of them. And we'd like to welcome members of CURI Hospital, who has been a very strong pillar of support for our organization as well. So thank you. I'll be handing over the mic to Amrita. Thank you.
I would now like to call upon Carolyn, our psychiatric social worker of TDCF, to give a few words about Dr. Sridhar Vaitheshwaran.
A very good morning to one and all present here. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome Dr. A very good morning to one and all present here. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome Dr. Sridhar Vaitheshwaran, Assistant Director and Consultant Psychiatrist at Schizophrenic Research Foundation, India. He is a clinician with applied research in dementia in low middle income countries settings. He has an outpatient unit for elderly with mental illness, including dementia, and his clinic at SCAF. His current research in India includes implementing cognitive simulation and interventions for psychosocial and human communities for dementia. Has his work related to adapting interventions for caregivers for persons with dementia and testing and feasibility using hybrid face robots in engaging persons. He is a face for the Dementia Care Center at SCAF, and we are honored to have you with us, sir. Request you to address the gallery to speak on the understanding elder abuse and safety in Indian context.
Good morning, everyone. To talk about elder abuse. Now, I have to say it's a disclosure that I am not an expert in elder abuse. I'm a psychiatrist, but in my routine practice, I do see people who have been abused and victims of abuse. So that's why I'm going to base my talk on. Much of what I'm going to talk today is in fact available on the internet, and in fact HelpAge India and the WHO have done some wonderful work in kind of raising awareness about elder abuse and what can be done to provide intervention for elder abuse. So today all I'm going to focus on is just to, I'm sure many of you will be aware of what it is and what is being happening, just to kind of bring it again up in the agenda. Unless we know about elder abuse, we will not be able to identify it. I think there's a saying kind of in medical literature. When I was a medical student, one of my teachers used to say, what your mind doesn't know, your eyes do not see. So unless you actually don't know what you're looking at, you would just ignore what is obvious in front of you. So this is going to be a primer on elder abuse. So what I'm going to do today is just going to talk about what is elder abuse, what is the prevalence, just to kind of talk about how many people are being abused in the current context, and looking at what is happening in India, and do you have any literature from India, and what are the things that you can look out for and this is from a clinician's perspective. But again, from a lay person's perspective, you can also keep your, antennae up to look for elder abuse as they appear. And what can we do when we identify someone who you think is being abused? So just such as some pointers. So what is elder abuse? This is the WHO definition. It can be a single act or a repeated series of acts. Okay? Just because someone was hit once doesn't make it not an abuse. நிறைய கோவத்தில் அடிச்சிட்டேன். I hope it's okay if I speak in Tamil and English. கோவத்தில் அடிச்சிட்டேன் அப்படிமாங்க. ரொம்ப தொல்லை பண்ணாங்க சார், அடிச்சிட்டேன் அப்படிமாங்க. And just one time தானே பரவாயில்ல, it's not abuse, we can't say it. Okay? So even if it is happening once, okay, it is an abuse. And occurring in any relationship where there is an expectation of trust. So it can be within the family, or it can be in a professional setting where you have doctors, nurses, other carers who are around in the hospital, porters, people, domestic workers, whoever it may be, anyone who is actually doing something which is harmful to an elderly person is an abuse, which causes harm or distress. This is again quite important. Sometimes I find when people are saying things to an elderly person, so நான் ஒன்றும் தப்பாக நினைக்கலையே, அதை நான் அப்படி சொல்லலை அப்படிம்பாங்க. But actually it is interpreted as being harmful to the person who is on the other end. So I think that is again very important. So we need to look at it from the perspective of the victim, from the perspective of the person who is being abused. So again, it can be an act of commission or it can be an act of omission. So நீங்கள் அடிக்கலாம், திட்டலாம், அதெல்லாம் நம்ம பண்ணுறது, பண்ண வேண்டியதை பண்ணாமல் இருக்கிறதும் it's an abuse, it's a form of abuse. Okay? So அவங்களுக்கு சரியாக மருந்து கொடுக்கல, அவங்களுக்கு சரியாக சாப்பாடு கொடுக்கல, those things are also contributed or kind of can be construed as abuse. So these are the common types of elder abuse. It can be physical abuse. Physical abuse can be hitting, pinching, biting. Okay, it can be pulling, restraining, கட்டி போடுறது. This is something very common occurrence. வீட்டில் கட்டி போட்டுருவாங்க, ஏன்னா அவர் எழுந்து வெளியில் போகிறாரு, கதவை தாப்பா போட்டுட்டு வீட்டுக்குள்ளேயே அடைச்சி வச்சுருவாங்க. ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி or restraining them within a room. Okay, those things are all done. Sometimes when you look at it from the caregiver's perspective, they say it is done for the person in person's best interests. Okay, அவர் கீழே விழுந்துருவார் இல்லைனா. Okay, but there is a framework that is available. Is that the only option? Okay, have you exhausted all other options? Okay, this is something which we encounter in clinical practice. So when we see someone who is at repeated risk of falls, எழுந்து நின்னா கீழே விழுந்துருவாங்க, ஆனால் அவங்க மறந்து போயிடுறாங்க, சொன்னாக்க மறந்து போயிடுவாங்க, கீழே விழுந்துடாதீங்க. So we have to look at less restrictive options. Of course, the priority is personal safety. அவங்களை சேஃபாக வச்சுக்கணும் is the priority. ஆனால் எந்த லிமிட்டோட, there is a limit to which we can actually provide an intervention. So have we exhausted all options? Okay, that is something which we need to look at before we go in for restraints. எடுத்த உடனே கட்டி போட்டுருங்க அப்படிங்கிறது it's actually wrong. So it can be physical, அதெல்லாம் psychological it can take many forms. திட்டுறது, அவங்கள துச்சமாக பேசுறது, அவங்கள அதாவது அவங்கள ரொம்ப ஒரு கீழ்த்தரமாக நடத்துறது. ஸோ those things can be அவங்க ஒன்றும் பேசாமல் இருக்கிறது, பேசினா கூட பேச்சு கொடுக்காமல் இருக்கிறது, அவங்கள ஒதுக்கி வைக்கிறது. All those things are forms of psychological abuse. Now financial and material abuse is very big. Actually, sir irukkareenga, I think he will actually give us more information, I'm sure, because this is something which is happening a lot. And I have a few case examples we can discuss later. And then sexual abuse. This happens. You'll be surprised how many times this happens. Abandonment. விட்டுட்டு போயிடுறது, அவங்களை கொண்டு வந்து ஹாஸ்பிட்டலில் GH, this is again very common. GHல I used to work in IMH before, Institute of Mental Health. விட்டுட்டு போயிடுவாங்க. Okay, they want your OP வாசலில் விட்டுட்டு they will just leave. Okay, and it's just abandoning the person because of variety of reasons. And then neglect is primarily அவங்களை சரியாக கவனிச்சிக்காமல் இருக்கிறது. Again, we'll come to that. And anything which causes loss of dignity and respect. Again, you will see sometimes elderly persons அவங்களை குளிப்பாட்டுறது எல்லாரும் பார்க்குற மாதிரி திறந்த ரூமில் வச்சு குளிப்பாட்டிட்டு இருப்பாங்க. ஓகே அவர் அவங்களுக்கு வந்து இப்போ ஹாஸ்பிட்டலில் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா சில சமயம் கத்தீட்டர் மாற்றும் போது இல்லை வந்து அவங்களுக்கு பெட் சோர்ஸ் கிளியர் பண்ணும்போது இல்லை அவங்க பெட்ஷீட்டை மாற்றும் போது ஸ்க்ரீன் எல்லாம் திறந்துருக்கும். ஓகே அண்ட் அவங்களால கம்யூனிகேட்டும் பண்ண முடியாது and everybody can see what is happening there with the patient. The patient is naked. So all this actually affects their dignity and respect. So this is also a form of abuse. So these are things which we need to keep in mind. So what is the prevalence worldwide? This is the survey and the kind of a review of reviews done by WHO and the worldwide prevalence in the community. We are not talking about institutions. Community prevalence only is 15.7%. Okay, so 100 பேர்ல கிட்டத்தட்ட 16 பேர் has been abused. Okay, of older persons. Now India, how many of you think is more or less in India? How many of you think more? Majority think more?
No. Because we don't care about elders. We care about
Okay, we have some strong opinions, yes. Okay. Actually in India it varies from 2.5 to almost 23%. The national average is said to be about 10%. Again, this is underreported. I mean, abuse is not easy to pick. Okay, there will be a gross underreporting of elder abuse. So this is again the latest finding from the Helpage India's report. Okay, the references are here, and this is actually a very good resource. You can actually download that. It's available free from the internet. And the common forms of abuse are disrespect. Okay, you see it every day, but we don't actually do anything. Busla வந்து when the person is a little bit slow getting into the bus, வந்துட்ட வீட்டில் சொல்லிட்டு வந்துட்டியா ஏன் வந்து கழுத்துறகிற. These are common forms of abuse we hear every day in our day-to-day practice. Okay, which we need to raise against. We need to kind of do something about these things. And then talking about verbal abuse, again திட்டுறது, it's very common. Okay. And then neglect. Okay, and it's again these are the three most common forms of abuse. Again, surprise or not a surprise, sons are the most common perpetrators. Okay, sons followed by daughters-in-law. இவங்க ரெண்டு பேரும் தான் நம்ம ஊர்ல most commonly abusing persons. And of course during the COVID pandemic the prevalence has gone up. Of course there is data which is coming up right now, they're collecting all the information, but we know that during the COVID pandemic the abuse has gone up quite significantly. Yes sir.
This COVID-19, I don't know whether what I heard, correct me wrong. Even many of the hospitals give priority to the youngsters for treatment. And I was told that even doctors instructed ignore people who are more aged because they want bed.
Okay.
Lot of inadequacies because of the elders were pushed out. Is that right? What I am telling?
I don't know about that. I haven't had any first-hand experience of doing that. But again, I won't be surprised if that has happened. Again, I think there's a concept called triage, wherein you prioritize people who will get the best benefit from any intervention you're going to provide if there is limited availability of resources. Okay, so that's probably what might have happened. So yeah.
Logically, it's right. Ethically,
Yeah, it's not right. It's not right. But that we'll talk about that later.
like
Yeah. So where does the abuse occur? Anywhere and everywhere. நம்ம எங்கெல்லாம் பெரியவங்க இருக்காங்களோ அங்கெல்லாம் abuse can happen. Okay. So it's not restricted to one place or the other. Own home, it can happen in their own homes. It can happen in the carer's home. Okay. அவங்க பையன் வீட்டில் இருக்காங்க, பொண்ணு வீட்டில் இருக்காங்க. It can happen there. It can happen in a day center. It can happen in a residential home. Or it can happen in a hospital. So it can happen in multiple settings. Wherever elderly persons are, the abuse can happen there. So we need to be watchful. So again, looking at who's at risk. The person who is older. So old, there is oldest old. Okay. So 60, 70, 80, 90, the mari, if you have, as the age goes up, the risk also goes up of being abused. Okay. Being a woman, being older and being a woman multiplies the risk. Okay. And then higher dependency. அவங்களுக்கு அடுத்தவங்க மேலே அவங்க சார்ந்து இருக்கணும் அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு நிலைமை இருந்ததுன்னா they are more likely to be abused. So if they need help with mobility, அவங்க எழுந்து வெளியில் போகணும்னா கூட யாராவது வரணும், or they need help with bathing, they need help with toileting, again the chances of abuse increases with each point increase in level of dependency. And then associated physical conditions, if they have any physical problems, vision problems, kannu theriyala, kaadu kekkala, adala irundha, again the risk of abuse increases. And then we have associated mental illnesses or dementia. So if they have any depression or psychosis, or if they have any mental illness or anything, or if they have dementia, the risk goes up. So what are the signs of abuse? How do you pick up abuse? The first thing is obvious injuries. Paathale theriyum, cuts, bruises, okay, anything that you see in their body. And you may actually have seen extremes of fractures, skull fractures and things like that. Put adichittu, the whole thing has become black and blue. Those things are all common. So this is something very obvious. If you see someone with an unexplained injury, investigate, look into it carefully. Again, untreated injuries in various stages of healing. Okay, ஒரு இடத்துல கொஞ்சம் ஆறுன மாதிரி இருக்கு, இன்னொரு இடத்துல ஃப்ரெஷ்ஷாக இருக்கு. So it been repeated. It's a pattern of repeated abuse. Okay, this is particularly common when you have an elderly person who is bedridden. You will see someone with multiple bruises in their bodies. Okay, and that can happen because again, when you have someone with advanced stages in dementia, they are not able to communicate. எப்போ யார் என்ன பண்ணாங்க அவங்களால சொல்ல முடியாது. Then you need to again be aware. So when you examine someone who is in an advanced stage of dementia, who has had a stroke and is recovering from that, and they are not able to communicate very well, look out for any evidence of injuries. Again, if they have any broken glasses, okay, அவங்க கைத்தடி உடைஞ்சிருக்கு, or if they again கையை கட்டி போட்டிருந்தாங்கன்னா, you will actually see marks. Okay, I have seen this many times. கிளினிக் வரும்போது கையில் வந்து அப்படியே காய்ச்சி போயிருக்கும் கையில், or they will have bruises in their wrists, and you know that they have been tied up. Okay, so it's such a common practice, unfortunately. Signs of being restrained. And then inappropriate use of medication. Again, this is very common. Either they give overdose. Okay, just அவங்களை படுக்க வச்சா போகிறோம், தூங்கினா போகிறோம் அப்படின்னு மருந்து கொடுத்துட்டே இருப்பாங்க திருப்பி, or they don't give the required medicines. They don't give them medicines for diabetes, they don't give them medicines for their hypertension, or they just ignore other things that they need treatment for. Again, whenever an older person comes and tells you என்ன வீட்டில் திட்டுறாங்க, or they seem different from the usual, don't ignore it. Don't say வயசானவர் ஏதோ சும்மா பேசுகிறாரு அப்படின்ட்டு. We shouldn't dismiss it. Okay, always pay attention, always take these things seriously. That's the only way we can actually make a difference. So if you see someone who, it could be your neighbor, it could be someone you know, a friend, they come and tell you something about being abused, take it seriously. We'll come to what can you do about it. Yeah, sure.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but just want to know, Mr. Prashanta Ganguli's attendance in the the surgery is over. Just want to know if the attendance is here. Sorry.
Thanks. So any signs of financial abuse? Financial abuse, again, as I said, it's very common. So அவங்க வந்து செக் புக்கில் சைன் போட்டு வச்சுருக்காங்க. Okay, blank checkbooks already signed. Or the person cannot sign. Okay, from your clinical assessments, இவரால் சைனை பேனாவே பிடிக்க முடியாது, கண்ணே தெரியல, பேனா பிடிச்சா கை நடுங்குது, எப்படி அவங்க சைன் போட்டாங்க. Okay, so those things you just need to keep mind aware of these things. Other sudden changes in bank accounts, you say that somebody இதெல்லாம் வந்து கிளினிக்கில் பார்க்குறதுங்கிறது it's secondary, but in your day-to-day practice, if you visit someone, your friends, okay, any of your relatives, we find that sudden changes are happening in their bank accounts, new names are being added to their account. Okay, all these things should raise your suspicion if something is going on here. And then, or they are making wills being changed quite suddenly without any obvious reasons, and uninvolved. முன்னாடி கண்டுக்கவே மாட்டாங்க, திடீர்னு வந்து நிறைய சொந்தக்காரங்க வந்து நிற்கிறாங்க வீட்டில். They care as if they are the only persons available for this person, and then unexplained transfer of assets. This happens a lot. Okay, I have seen this happening a lot in my practice, unfortunately, and people being made homeless because of that. And then numerous unpaid bills when they are supposed to be actually paying the rent, paying the electricity bill. Again, I have had examples wherein வீட்டில் கரண்ட் கட் ஆகிடுச்சு, என் பையன் தான் கரண்ட் பில் கட்டுறேன்னு சொன்னான், நான் கட்டவே இல்லை, என் மாதம் என் பென்ஷன் அக்கௌண்ட்லாம் அவங்ககிட்ட தான் இருக்குது, ஆனால் கட்டவே மாட்டேங்கிறான், கரண்ட் போயிடுச்சு எங்கள் வீட்டில். Okay, this is again something which can happen. We need to be careful, we need to be watchful about these things. And then lack of amenities, our personal requirements, whatever that they need, they are not able to get those things. And then someone who is older is being isolated from meeting others. அவங்களை வேற யாருமே பார்க்க விடாமல் ரெஸ்ட்ரிக்ட் பண்ணுறாங்க. Again, that should raise your suspicion. Is something, are they being exploited here? Okay. வெளியில் போனால் இதை பற்றி சொல்லிடுவாங்க, அதனால் வீட்டிலேயே வச்சு மறைச்சி வச்சிடறாங்க. I mean, when I talked about COVID has given a very good opportunity to hide people, okay, and stop them interacting from others. So neglect, there are many forms of neglect, okay, physical, social and health circumstancesல அவங்க neglect பண்ணலாம். பார்த்தாலே தெரியும், they are obviously neglected, they are smelling, they are not very clean and all that can cause health problem. They have rashes, okay, முடியெல்லாம் அப்படியே we recently had a patient whose hair was all matted, okay, and there was a lot of lice in their head and all that. So all this can you need to raise a suspicion that they are being abused. Inadequately clothed, okay, and again that's something which you need to look out for. Malnourishment and dehydration, I have a very interesting example about this later on. And untreated medical conditions, obviously அவங்களுக்கு diabetes இருக்கு, but they are not being treated for that. And withholding of medication or over medication, we talked about that. And lack of assistance, அவங்களால தனியாக சாப்பிட முடியாது, they need help, but that help is not being provided to them. So causes for abuse at home, poor quality of long-term relationship. So ஏற்கனவே it's a bad relationship in the household, and that's kind of continued over time. And again, the carer is not able to provide the level of care that they need to provide for the person. Okay, so particularly in cases with dementia, wherein the carer is not able to help out to the extent that they need help with, okay, and that causes a lot of frustration. And the caregivers are also human beings. I think we shouldn't forget that. And they also become frustrated at one point. And I've seen many caregivers becoming depressed and also becoming very anxious about certain things, and that can cause problems. So if the carer has mental or physical health problems themselves. So in a professional setting, say in a hospital or in a residential setting, if the staff are inadequately trained, okay, if they don't know how to handle a patient, okay, and they get frustrated, சொன்னதே திருப்பி சொல்லிட்டு இருக்காரு, எவ்வளோ வாட்டி நான் சொல்கிறது கேட்க மாட்டேங்கிறாங்க, நான் கொடுக்குறேன் சாப்பிட மாட்டேங்கிறாங்க, okay, those things, it needs the staff need to be trained how to handle these problems. And if the staff are being poorly supervised, okay, there is no organizational structure, so எல்லாரும் அவங்க மாட்டம் அவங்க வேலையை பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க, there is nobody to supervise them, okay, that causes problems. So we need a line of supervision. And then little support from the management has to have an oversight. They need to actually take disciplinary action when required, and the support illanaka we can't provide service. Or if the staff are overworked, okay, அவங்களுக்கு பிரேக்கே கொடுக்காம they are being overworked, 8 மணி நேரம் 12 மணி நேரம் 15 மணி நேரம், they are continuously working without any break. All of us will become tired, okay, if you are going to work in that setting. So that can increase the risk of being or abusing others. And if they are working in isolation, where யாரும் supervision இல்லை, தனியாக இருக்காங்க, அவங்க மட்டும்தான் இருக்காங்கன்னா, the risk of abuse also goes up. Again, if there is lack of policies and procedures in the organization to actually address this issue of abuse. So I'll present 3 cases today. So this is Mrs. L. She visits the clinic with her son. Again, this is someone who I saw quite recently. The son does most of the talking. Patient பேசவே விட மாட்டாங்க. And kind of something was, you know that something was not right here. You ask the son to wait outside, he very reluctantly goes out, okay, and then given time the lady breaks down and then starts talking about how she is very unhappy at home, and then she says that since she's been widowed, பையன் கூட இருக்காங்க, and he doesn't allow her to go out or meet people and all that, and he manages her bank account. So she gets a pension. She used to work as a clerk, and she also gets her husband's money, okay, அதெல்லாம் வச்சிட்டு she has one bank account and the card is with the son, and she has no control over that money, okay, and apparently she says that amounts tuning to lakhs has been taken from her account, okay, and she doesn't know what's happening with the money, okay. So this is one case of, you can call this psychological abuse, you can call this financial abuse, okay. So it is abuse nonetheless, okay. It's important we identify it. This happens a lot. This is Mr. A. He's a gentleman with dementia. He's not sleeping. So he came to the clinic. He was very agitated, so he prescribed medication. And the dose was 0.5 milligram of the medicine because he wasn't taking oral food. So we actually said that we can, it's a liquid, we can mix it with water and give it to him so that he gets, the agitation comes down, he can sleep better. Now, unfortunately, what they have done is they've exhausted the whole bottle in 2 days. Okay, the whole bottle has about 100 ml. Okay, 0.5 milligram is 0.5 ml. Okay, so ஒரு நாளைக்கு 0.5 ml தான் கொடுக்கணும், 2 நாள் 100 ml கொடுத்து முடிச்சிட்டாங்க பேஷண்ட்டுக்கு. Okay, and he was bed bound. He actually became very sick after that. So this is again kind of very dangerous kind of doses of medication being given, and this is again a form of abuse. Now Mrs. G, this is a patient who I saw in the UK, this is some time ago, and I thought I'll raise this issue because abuse can happen even in the best of the situation. So we have someone who, she has dementia, and the family noticed that she is becoming less and less enthusiastic, and later they find she's being very weak, and then romba thoonga maatengiranga, she's very agitated, she's very restless, and she's not the isolated case. We had a cluster of patients being referred from that same nursing home, and eventually we found out that the patients were not being fed. Okay, so evening what they do is they feed the patients at around 5 or 6 o'clock. In the UK usually people have their tea early, that's dinner they call as tea, and they have it early around 4 or 5, and then they actually get another small meal later in the night, and that's been missed, and they're not given anything, they're not given anything to drink, and patients are losing weight gradually over a period of time. So this is something which again is a form of neglect and abuse. So preventing abuse, be aware, and this is an important exercise in that direction. So being aware of abuse and different form abuse. Now it's not always just hitting, biting or pinching. Okay, there are other forms of abuse which we all need to be tuned into. Looking out for the signs of abuse. Ask if the be on the lookout for signs, and ask if the person needs help. If the person needs any help, that's extremely important. We look out for it. And sometimes we hesitate to ask this question. அவங்க தப்பா நினைச்சுப்பாங்களா, அவங்க ஏதாவது சொல்லுவாங்களா? Okay, and that's a kind of a concern that many of us have. But many a time it's okay to ask. Okay, in fact, if abuse is really happening, people are waiting for an opportunity to talk about it. Okay, so ask. If you think something is wrong, don't hesitate to ask. Supervision and training of staff. This is very, very important. If you have kind of a professional setup, you need to bring in training, we need to bring in supervision. And again, we need to address any caregiver issue. If the caregiver is depressed, they need to be treated. If the caregiver is overburdened, they need to be helped. Okay, something has to be done. Either additional help has to go into their homes, or the patient needs to be removed from that setting to provide, to protect them, and also help the caregiver to recover. And then you need to have policies and procedures. So any organization, any place that deals with older persons needs to have a policy about how to identify elder abuse and what to do when elder abuse is being suspected, and how staff need to be kind of made aware of what to look for elder abuse. Okay, depending on the professional background and where it is being held, the level of training can be escalated. Okay, it need not be to the professional level. At least basic awareness of elder abuse needs to be emphasized. And having an oversight always helps. Somebody needs to have an overview, an oversight of what is happening when there are elders in an organization. Okay, so that's often helpful. These are the two elder helpline available in Chennai. You can call them if you suspect anything. There are social workers available, the HelpAge India number, and also the police elder helpline. I believe that they have a social worker who is available, and they have an ambulance which can go and pick up patients if it's necessary. So it's very, very important. We kind of keep these things in your contact in your phone. So again, thanks to my wonderful team, some of whom are here, and please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much. Complex issues need complex solutions. So it's not just health service, it has to be from the community, it has to be from various sections of the society. We need to build in யாரும் கேட்க மாட்டாங்கன்னு இருந்தால் அபியூஸ் நடந்து தான் இருக்கும். யாராவது தட்டி கேட்டாக்க, நாட் அபியூசிங், கேட்டாக்க definite abuse will come down. So that is what is happening. So if you road you see someone being disrespectful to an elder, you stop and kind of question that behavior. That's the barest minimum we can do to begin with. Okay. When we see organization, as I said before, training is so important. Training and supervision is very, very important. And I know there are many places where people start those institutions with the best of intentions, but they don't plan very well in terms of training, staffing. It's overwhelming for anyone. Anyone is going to decompensate in that situation. So there has to be, and again, money is important. I think you need to invest in this, and without investment, things can't improve. So we have policies, we have national policies. There are acts which are available in our country, which actually in fact, the court can order the son or the family to look after an older person if they are being neglected or they are being abused.
But court cannot supervise all the time.
Exactly. So there has to be implementation. You need resources. You need actually community social workers who can go and supervise. The court can't supervise. The social workers need to supervise. But where are they? We need to pay salaries for them. So policies, acts, standalone, there has to be an investment. So political activism is again very important. We all just need to raise a voice. I think we have very important organizations present here, Rotary, Probus, and Helpage India. And I think we just need to push the agenda forward. It's not easy, but it has to be done.
I would now like to call upon Mrs. Rama Rajesh, the head psychotherapist at the Dementia Care Foundation, to the stage. She has great interest in working with the geriatric population and mainly in physiotherapy. She will introduce our second guest speaker for the day, Mr. Babu Krishnamoorthy. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. It gives actually an immense pleasure for me to introduce.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce the next speaker for the day, Mr. Babu Krishnamoorthy. Mr. Babu Krishnamoorthy, a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, is an investment consultant with 25 years of experience in investment banking and wealth management. He is a founder of Chief Sherpa at Finsherpa Investments Private Limited. He is also an advisor and co-founder of a revolutionary fintech startup, Roundups. He has also co-founded Pelican Wealth and been associated with Allegro Capital. He is an author, professional speaker, a reader of non-fiction books, also an amateur marathon runner. His passion doesn't end with this, so he is also an active Rotarian, which has also involved him in various society uplifting projects. He has authored the best-selling book, Unlocked Secrets to a Wealthy Life, which helps young adults to start their investing journey in a methodical manner. He being a past president of IFA Galaxy, during his presidency, he has also got 25 fellow distributors to co-author a book called Stay Hungry, Stay Bullish on how to build a robust mutual fund distribution business. Now I welcome Mr. Babu Krishnamoorthy to share a talk on financial wellness for elders.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here, Purnima, Gayatri, and thank you for that introduction, Rama. This is a new topic for me. I've spoken on investment products. Reasonably, those are my domain areas. I know quite a bit. But relating to elder abuse and financial aspects relating to that is my first time. So I'm saying this upfront because I am, like Dr. Sridhar before me, trying to pull from my 20 years, 25 years of experience of what I have seen, encountered, and some of these are my own points. It's quite likely that I may not cover one or two aspects, which I'm sure you will raise questions later and we can have a discussion as well. Yeah. With that, when I was thinking about this subject, one common recurring theme that came to my mind and a very important thought is that as human beings, as we evolve, for the first 20 years, we are dependent on our parents, for education and whatever be that. from the age of 20 to the age of maybe 60, we take charge. We become the people who become the providers for the family. The family revolves around us. We are people who are kind of delivering whatever the family needs. You know, the son needs to study college, to the daughter's marriage, everything the person starts becoming. In some sense, I have noticed that many people even stop thinking for themselves. They think for everybody else. And when I was wanting to kind of talk at this forum, I think when we retire or at the age of 60, whichever it happens at that time, I think we all need to pause, take a pause at that point and do a mind shift change. That mind shift change is extremely important. And the doctor did allude to financial abuse. And I see that very prevalent. And it's one of those things, unlike the many of the other things where you had some marks, you know, if you're restrained, you'll have a mark somewhere here, so on and so forth. This financial abuse is something where the kayame theriyadu. It's kind of, you will not have any marks left, but it is very deep and it is very disturbing in some sense as well. And I'm going to take an example. So the first aspect I want all the elders to do is, at the age of 60, I want you to step back and change your mind orientation from saying that I live for my family or I live for my others, to saying, how am I going to live for myself and my spouse over the next 30 years? Right? That's a very, very important mind shift change that one needs to do. Very, very important. How many of us know this brand which had an ad about 20 years ago called The Complete Man? Yeah. Any guesses? Raymond. Raymond was the company. 25 years ago, they started an ad campaign and that always said, The Complete Man. The story I'm going to tell you is of financial abuse of the chairman of Raymond. Vijaypat Singhania was the chairman of Raymond's, the man who controlled at the peak of his thing, something like 3,000 crores plus of personal wealth. He used to be the sheriff of Bombay. He's not a small man. He's not somebody who was unknown. He was the sheriff of Bombay. He was very, very prominent in various forums. He was in advisory boards and a very, very intelligent man at that. Not somebody who you would associate ayo pavam. He's not that kind of a guy. But guess what? Later on in his life, when he chose to step back from active life, he gave the stake of his company to his son. And since then, he has been in trouble. He gave his entire stake to his son. He kind of transferred this entire stake, settled it in favor of his son. And since then, he has been living a very, very poor life from his own perspective. In fact, to the point that 3 years ago, just before COVID, he released a book. And the book is incidentally titled An Incomplete Life. Because from enjoying 3,000 crores, he is now in an old age home, which is kind of barely able to fulfill some of his needs and so on and so forth. Now, the reason I'm taking the story is that this is not an ordinary man. This is not somebody like you and me. This is somebody like Vijaypat Singhania. If something like this can happen to Vijaypat Singhania, then let's pause for a minute that it's possible for any of us. I'm not suggesting for a moment that our family members are bad. I'm just saying that it's extremely important to keep control of your finances till your last breath. Your family needs the money, or if you desire to give money to your family, ideally I would say you must educate your children, and that there it should stop. Beyond that, your children don't need any more of your money, right? Should not need. If at all you want to do something more, then it should come after your time through your will, not before. I know cases where people have gone to the elders, and typically elders have money, right? They've retired, have a crore more, son, nephew, cousin, sisters, husband goes to them, says, I'm running a business. What interest are you getting? I'm getting 7% in the bank. My business, I'm paying 14%. I don't mind paying you 10%, right? And then you give 50 lakhs to that gentleman and that goes down the drain. For whatever reason, right? Business has its ups and downs. Now, as the brother-in-law, you cannot go and change that relationship. You cannot go and fight with your sister, your brother-in-law for the money. So that money is written off. And you live with a lifelong regret that one is you've lost the money, second is you've lost the relationship as well. The simplest thing would have been to upfront say, I don't have the money, or I don't have money enough to allocate for this beyond my retirement. I'm just giving you a perspective. I'm not saying it's easy, but sometimes saying no is far easier than saying yes and undergoing a lot more pain in life. I've seen many cases where people have given money to their near and dear. Like doctor said, the usual perpetrators of abuse are not somebody you don't know. They are somebody who is very close to you. Very difficult people to say no to. They are usually the people who are perpetrators of abuse. Same is the case with financials. So always my first advice to you is think for yourself first. Always look at all the scenarios. If I gave money to my near and dear, and if they are unable to return that money, even if it's a financial transaction, what is my recourse? If you give it to a third party, you at least have a legal recourse to go to. Are you going to go legal against your brother-in-law or your son-in-law or your XYZ to recover that money? Think about it. I know a case, and these are all genuine, because when I was thinking through what I'm going to talk today, I recalled those 10 cases in my life where I've encountered cases of this. So I know a case where a gentleman had given a personal guarantee. When you take a home loan or take a vehicle loan, etc., they demand a personal guarantee of somebody who's known. So I know an elder who gave a personal guarantee for a relative, and that personal guarantee devolved. 99% of the time when each of us are asked this question, we just take the form and sign it, because we know that nobody is going to come and ask you this money, right? But this gentleman got into a problem. About 8-10 years ago, the bank which had lent money to that original person who's a relative landed up at the doorstep saying that the person is untraceable and you're the guarantor. So please cough up that money of 8-10 lakhs now to close that. So all I'm trying to kind of reiterate here is that one of the best ways to avoid financial abuse is to have financial resources within yourself. Be rich, keep that richness with you. If at all it needs to pass, it should pass after your time. Yeah? How do I move this? Okay. I'm going to tell a quick story because it's close to lunchtime and people tend to doze off otherwise. So there's a story of, let's go about 50, 100 years back in time. And imagine Rajasthan in the mid-90s or early 90s. So there's this guy in Rajasthan, in a rural village in Rajasthan, and he gets a telegram from his relative in Mumbai saying that there is a wedding in Mumbai, so you need to come to Mumbai. So this guy prepares and takes a train and goes to Mumbai. And on entering Mumbai into his cousin's flat, he noticed for the first time in his life running water. Because in Rajasthan in those days, there was never a concept of running water. So he's quite astonished, amazed, and he's just standing there watching it. His cousin says, please have a bath, we'll go attend the wedding. So they finished the wedding. On the way back, this gentleman stops off at a hardware store and says, I need to take this magic back with me to Rajasthan. And he goes, buys a tap, goes back to Rajasthan and calls all the elders in the village, fixes this tap to the wall and calls them for a grand opening. You know what would have happened, right? The tap is opened, kaathu dhaan varudhu, no water. So the elders all kind of, indal ipdi dhaan, always kind of making some natak. And then they go away. This guy is very astonished. The same tap in Mumbai was pouring a lot of water, but in Rajasthan, it's not. So he calls his cousin and says, why is this, the same tap isn't working here? So his cousin laughs and says, this tap that is flowing the water that's flowing is the last of the steps, many steps that it takes for the water to reach you. So first there's a large tank in which rainwater gets filled, that is passed on to a purification place, and from there different areas the water is pumped to, and then to overhead tanks, and then to each apartment, and that's how you get. So his cousin says, unless you do this whole background work of plumbing, the water will not come in the tap. While the story is a little funny, but it's what is reality as well in financial terms. And I'll relate the two. Many people, as we grow older, we need to get a grip on our finances. And one of the first things we tell people is, please put your financial plan in place, which is equivalent to the plumbing in place. Is it okay if I talk in Tamil and English? Is there anybody who doesn't understand Tamil here? Okay. Or you don't understand, so I'll restrict it to English. Okay. So, till my retirement day, if I was enjoying a cash flow of 50,000 rupees, let's say, I'm just taking an example for my basic needs, then one day after I retire next month onwards, I need to have figured out how I'm going to get that 50,000 rupees every month. And on a yearly basis, that also needs to grow up by 5%. Because India, we are blessed with an important growth system called inflation. Panathoda villa 5% koranjinde varudhu every day. Which means if it's 50,000 today, next year to live the same lifestyle, I need 52,500, 55,000 the year after, and so on and so forth. And that's what we've been living with over the last 20 years. Now to do this, one needs to sit, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist and say, where can I invest my money and how is this cash flow going to come on a month basis? That's all. A variety of different instruments. The purpose of today's meeting is not to talk about that, but this plan of action needs to put down on paper by each one of the persons. I come across a lot of people who are very anxious in their mind. நாளைக்கு இன்ஃப்ளேஷன் வந்ததுன்னா இதே மாதிரி போச்சுன்னா என்னுடைய நாளைக்கு எப்படி இருக்கும் அப்படின்றது. I tell them, please put it down on paper. And once you commit to paper, all your anxiety and worry which is in your mind gets transferred to the paper. By and large, you can be free of anxiety. You may still not have all the answers, but a large part of the financial anxiety that people carry as they grow older gets removed when you do it this way. So I would request, or if you have not done already, and if you have done, fantastic, commit to paper on a financial plan. What is a financial plan? Nothing but எங்கிட்ட எவ்வளோ corpus இருக்கு, அந்த corpusலேருந்து எனக்கு how am I going to generate this money that I need month on month. And one of the important mindset shifts that we need to do is that if for some reason, God forbid, if for some reason my corpus is going to generate not 50,000, 30,000, you will have to figure out a way of how you can manage your resources in life within that 50,000. And that's easy, my friends. I don't think that's so much difficult. But once you do this exercise, you will find that there is no more anxiety in the mind with relating to money. That's the second thing which I wanted to leave. I have 7 points. I will quickly run through the rest as well. So this is the other thing. Off and on, I come across people who are constantly toying with different ideas. Right? நம்ம எல்லாருக்கும் ஒரு இயல்பு இருக்கு, ஒரு nature. We are all blessed with a certain temperament and nature that cannot change. Broadly, it is there and it will remain the way it is. But as people become older and the anxiety to generate a certain amount of interest, you find that they start running towards instruments that have apparently given higher return. I'll give you a classic example. That's where the big returns are happening. You need to take a step back and think whether you are suited to stock market. Is that something that you are willing to take the bet on? When we sit with clients who are elder and who come to us with this kind of a request, we always ask them a scenario. If you put in 100 rupees today and for some reason stock market takes a downturn and the 100 becomes 70, will you still be able to go sleep well for the next 3 years if it doesn't become 100 rupees back? Can you live with your 70 rupees for the next 3-5 years? If you can, by all means jump into the stock market. But if it becomes 70 and because of the 30 rupees, that 30% negative, you're going to one, lose your sleep, second, lose your peace, and also lose your capital. Because what happens is many a time when it goes down to 70, people go out and pull the money out. In which case you don't even have the ability of it going back to 100. So you've lost it. What is a notional loss becomes an actual loss. If that is the behavior that you're going to have, then we say you shouldn't tread into stock markets or mutual funds or any of those instruments which can apparently give you a higher return and also carry the risk. So it's very, very important as seniors or as elders to say, what will I do, what I will not do. I have senior citizens who have 100% of their money in stock markets only. I have an 87-year-old customer in Bangalore, 100% of his money only in stock market. But he has been in stock market for the last 25-30 years. He has seen many cycles ups and downs. He has no problem. Even if he lives his most extravagant life in the next 10 years, he will only exhaust 10% of his overall corpus. He also knows this. So he is willing to take that bet. He has temperament, he is okay to do that. Otherwise, most others, we should think about it. Because this chasing returns after you retire, losing your sleep, losing your peace is really not worth it. Because a lot of us want to be where you are. You know, when on a stressful day, and I'm speaking for Dr. Sridhar as well, we say we're waiting one day on a deep stress day. We're saying one day, you know what, I'll retire and I'll have a very comfortable life. Right? That's what we all imagine. And I'm sure you would have imagined it many years ago too. That day, when you're supposed to be having peace, you should not be without peace because of this having invested in a wrong place. Chennai is the home for the maximum innovative products that have pulled money from investors and made it disappear. So we're very innovative people. So tree, land, goat, farm, rice, name it, we've done it. The latest that's going on now is called cryptocurrency. So those who have not yet exhausted their quota of losses can jump in here as well. But jokes apart, I have encountered endless number of people who have lost money. And if you have a temperament to live with it, absolutely, by all means you should do. But if you're temporarily not suited to losing money, or you are not at peace if you've lost money, then don't try it. This is not the age to try. Right? That would be my next advice to you. The other is, as we grow older, health becomes a very important component of our life. But there are two distinctions I want to make. Many a times I come across elders who go to their banks and the banker on the other side says, you should take this insurance. And they kind of ask me after they've taken. They never asked me before. After they've taken, they come back to me. Is it useful for me? Life insurance, especially life insurance, is essentially to protect your family from the loss financially during your earning time. So typically life insurance's need for life insurance actually stops happening after the age of 55 or even 60. Generally, 95% of the people don't require any life insurance after 55 to 60 years because what you have not been able to create from 30 to 55 or 60, you're unlikely to create after you retire. And that financial need for your family is not going to be felt. So I'd say you should not take life insurance. I mean, a very, very broad statement. There could be specific exceptions, but broadly, life insurance is not for elders.
Especially now, life insurance.
But on the contrary, what the banker or anybody else will not tell you is that you need a robust health insurance. And you need a good health insurance. That is very, very important. Health is not cheap, it is expensive, and it is likely to continue to grow as well. So you need a good health insurance cover. Adukku that you will need to invest. And health insurance has multiplicity of அதுக்குள்ள உட்கார்ந்து ஆராய்ச்சி பண்ணனா 3 நாள் ஆகும். Because the simplest thing is எவ்வளோ கவர் எவ்வளோ ப்ரீமியம்ன்றது தான் சிம்பிளஸ்ட். அந்த ஃபைன் பிரிண்ட் ஒன்று இருக்கும், அது படிக்கவே முடியாது கண்ணில். அதுல தான் நிறைய terms and conditions. Loopholes இல்ல, that's the way it is, right? So there are lots of things. So I would strongly recommend you to have a good health insurance. Now normally people come to me and say good health insurance, now is there a number to it? There is no number, there is no magic formula. But I would say if you are in your 60s and so on, have a basic 5 or 10 lakhs of medical insurance and have a top up of 10 to 20 lakhs. So overall about 30 lakhs of health insurance cover. In my mind, a family floater for the husband and wife is a good idea to have. More, definitely, if you can, if you need, but not lesser. At some point as you grow older, this need will be felt there. You can't keep raising the rates at later dates because there is a point at which it becomes more and more expensive to increase them. So do it up earlier. And there are lots of ways to do it. You can have a basic policy for a smaller value and have a top-up for a higher value. And these top-up policies are much lower in value. So, ஒரு 5 லட்சம் ரூபாய்க்கு ஒரு health insurance-க்கும் ஒரு 20 லட்சம் ரூபாய் ஒரு top-up-க்கும் the premiums will be pretty similar because the way the policies are constructed, the 5 lakhs will cover the base, 0 to 5 will get covered by the base policy. Anything above 5 is what will come to the second policy because the option to reach the second policy is only secondary. Those policies are much cheaper. So you can devise it in multiple ways, but that would be my thought. Health is a very important component of a senior citizen's life. So, and there are lots of interesting products. Earlier, if you had diabetes, you wouldn't get coverage. If you already had some existing illness, you may not get. All that is going away now. So a lot of pre-existing illnesses are also covered. Of course, they have a limit. Pre-existing illness irundadna 12 மாசத்துக்கு அது related claim கொடுக்க மாட்டாங்க. But you nevertheless have a cover for all experts. So I think it's a good idea to get your health checked. I think it's a bad idea to have life insurance. I mean, at least take a new life insurance after your 60 is my thought process. But there could be exceptions. don't commit to long-term commitments, any investments. So I commonly come across people who've been proposed to take a 10-year, 15-year insurance premium products after they retire. I tell them you shouldn't get into insurance products. Require you commitment of pay. I said, when you're not earning, why this commitment to pay? You shouldn't get into this commitment to pay in whatever form it is. And I constantly tell them that you should get into things where cash flow is more important than return. People often confuse the two. The return is the return that you get on your investment. Cash flow is when that return comes back to you into your bank account. For people who are below 60, return is more important than cash flow. They already have a salary income that's coming to them, so cash flow is not important to them. It reverses exactly the opposite after retirement. After retirement, cash flow is far more important than return. Return கொஞ்சம் கம்மியா இருந்தாலும் எனக்கு அந்த பணத்தோடைய return or cash வந்து எனக்கு வரணும். I need to access that. That's important. And I think it's important to get these distinctions right as you grow older, because you will need, and it's purely psychological. I found people who are very nervous as senior citizens when they don't have enough in their bank account. And it's quite natural. Right? The son or the daughter-in-law, in their own enthusiasm, I'm sure it's in the right spirit, would have invested in a 5-year cumulative fixed deposit, or would have invested in a long-term investment of 5-year, 10-year, where the returns are higher. But when I sit with that senior citizen and I'm discussing the financials, I find that nervousness. Right? ஒரு 2 லட்சம் கூட பேங்க்ல இல்ல. At some point in time, if I want to gift to my grandson on his birthday, 10,000 or 15,000, I'm having to think twice. Cash flow is more important sometimes than return, and it's a very, very important aspect for senior citizens to have access to their cash flow. ₹1,00,000 crores. I'm repeating this number very consciously. 1,00,000, that is 1 followed by 5 zeros, crores, is the amount of money that is lying with central government without anybody claiming it. All because people have either not nominated or have a second holder in their investment products. Please do not add to that kitty. My simple advice. Any investment, any bank account, any mutual fund, any insurance, எடுத்தீங்கன்னா அதுல தயவு செய்து நாமினேஷன் ஒன்று போடுங்க, or a second applicant வச்சுக்கோங்க. If you don't do this, it's likely that after your time, that money will go to central government. If that's your intent, by all means. But if that's not your intent, don't do it. You'll be adding to a kitty of 1,00,000 crores. I often come across this very, very disturbing to me. I've dealt with senior citizens for the last 20 years. I know elders, in the ₹500 they will kind of go to the bank, drop the check, make sure that gets credited into their account and all of it, and they will take so much of pains about their money. But son will be in New York working in some big bank. Now, if the nominations are in an order, the bank will make him run around a couple of times, or the institutions, whichever way. At some point, just throw up his hand and say, now, andare 15 naliki to complete these formalities. Otherwise, if I'm not able to do it, I'll come back the next time. And the next time, I've never seen this happen. It's always a toss-up. If it's a couple of thousands, 50,000, 1,00,000, the person will write it off in his mind and go on, because it's just too painful to get involved and do that stuff. But I get the view of both. I've seen the father take meticulous care of even 500 rupees of his money. And I see the son on the other side. And I'm not saying he's doing it deliberately, it's his own circumstance, maybe he's busy in his work, whatever be it. But they just not able to get things done. So the answer is, get your back-end documentation right as we grow older. It's a small service we need to do to the next generation as well. Make the process of transmission after our time, if the monies and so on needs to go to the next generation, it needs to happen quite seamlessly. Don't make it more difficult. The simplest way to do this is nomination and second applicant. It's easy, easier done. Adu pannale konjam kashtam dhaan நம்ம ஊர்ல, but it's easier done. If you didn't have this, the process is hell. Let me tell you, it's not easy.
Can I just ask a quick question? Which is better, joint or nomination? Because today everybody opens an account online, pretty much, right? Nomination is just a name that you put out. What is the proof that this person is the actual nominee to collect the money? Is that where the problem occurs at a time?
No, it doesn't occur there. See, I'll give you a broad sense of what the difference is. I mean, nomination itself is a 2-hour talk, but having said that, nomination gives the person, the nominee will hold the money on your behalf. That's what it means. In your absence, the money gets transferred to the nominee. Right? But second holder is a lot more simpler. In nomination, you need to show a set of documentation, death certificate, and various other legal headship certificate and so on and so forth. Whereas in the case of joint, only death certificate is good enough. Right? They automatically transfers. It doesn't matter who the legal heirs are, so on and so forth. It will move to the second applicant in which way. Second applicant is also a good thing because in the absence of the first person, first applicant being indisposed for whatever reason, the second applicant can still sign and redeem and whatever, do those transactions if need be. Whereas in case of nomination, if the first person is indisposed, that investment is stuck. The nominee cannot act until the event happens. So there are lots of different permutation and combination. But I would tend to think second applications is always a little better than nomination, if it's possible. So if you have an intent, and I know a lot of us care for our money during our lifetime, but if you care for what that money must do after your lifetime, then you need to write a will. If you don't write a will, it gets evenly divided among your legal heirs in the equal proportion and taken whichever way. But if you intend that it needs to be done in a certain way, then you need to write a will. The will-nale ellarkum oru the Ramar will mari romba bayangarama boodagarama varudhu. Actually no, it's a very simple process. Of course there are two ways to do it. One is a legal way. You can get a legal writing to be done in which you mention all the beneficiaries to whom you want to give, annex all your assets which you want to give, and then write it, get it signed by two people who have no connects with your family, two independent people who would observe you sign that document, and then you can go register it in the sub-registrar office. If you did that, it's a foolproof methodology. That is one way. The other way is, இதெல்லாம் எனக்கு பண்றது முடியாது, time இல்லை, etc. A simple document, you can sit at home with two of your friends and write down who you want to give what. Very similar to what I said. I, Babu Krishnamoorthy, of my own free will, write this will. அவ்வளோதான். அதுக்கப்புறம் நீங்கள் என்னெல்லாம் point 1, point 2, point 3 போறீங்க, that itself is a will that is acceptable by the court if tomorrow there is a dispute.
Even if it's not registered? Even if it's not registered,
even if it is not this, your simple writing on hand itself is acceptable. So this is also a will. This also has legal implications as long as, and you can write it and give it to one of your friends and say, if something were to happen to me, you can bring this up. And similarly, you can ask your friend to give his will to you so that you can do it. So there are a variety of ways to deal with this. There is no லீகலாக போயிட்டு ஒரு லீகல் ஃபர்மில் பண்ணிட்டு தான் பண்ணணும்னு கிடையாது, இப்படியும் பண்ணலாம். But one request I have is that when you write this will, also call all the people who you intend to have a stake in and tell them plainly. 90% of the problems that I have seen happen is that you've written a will, somebody thinks that he's going to get so and so, and you've written something that's different from what he's thinking, and there is the problem. So if you intend to give something to somebody, your family, you tell them, நான் will எழுதி கொடுத்திருக்கேன், இதுல உனக்கு இது கிடைக்கும் after my time. That's it. You don't need to accept whatever they say. இல்ல எனக்கு கொஞ்சம் ஜாஸ்தி கம்மி, all that. As a matter of fact, you're just communicating tomorrow so that they are mentally aware that this is the amount that comes back. The reason I'm saying this is, in the 4 or 5 cases where I have seen siblings fight, has been because they thought father is closest to me, so I'll get this house after father. All 3 of them thought they'll get the house. The house can only go to 1%. So those kind of things you can kind of dissolve right there, beforehand rather than later. So writing a will is a good idea. Maybe while writing itself you'll have some thoughts as to how the affairs of your family are going to be managed after your time, so you can kind of do it even before. So a lot of things can happen in this whole process. It's an important part of making sure that your children celebrate your life, not curse your life after you. So if you ask me, some of these things are good. I think I'm more or less done. Yeah. That's it. You know, these are all the things which I thought, you know, I sat a couple of days back and said, if I were knowing all that I knew on investments, if I were your age or if I was an elder too, what are the things that I would need to take care? And this is the outcome. So I hope it added some value to you. If there are any questions.
What about the income tax?
You have to pay. See, as an elder, and if you're above 80, there is a fair amount of deductions that you have.
Hi all, I'm Ravigo. So I'm working for BNP Paribas, a France bank. I belong to IT department. Thank you for the invite to this session.
Not slowly, please. Not fast, slowly.
Okay. So I'm an IT employee. So thanks for this invite to this session. I'm happy to be here with you all. My question to Babu sir is, actually you said the nominations at the second applicant, right? So on what basis they have the application of the scheme without the nomination or second applicant? Because in which ways after the time period of the primary person, it's going to be stayed. The amount is going to be stayed, which is not used by anybody. So on what basis they have this? If they have the mandatory nomination or the second applicant, then this can be managed well, right? So on what basis they have this?
So this whole thing is now getting changed to that idea which you're talking about, that no investment can be made without mandatory nomination. Right? That's only coming up now. So for people in this hall who may have done investments in the past without nomination was what this thing is. But now a lot of investments, you cannot even make the investment if you do not specify nomination. Second is that you may have made a nomination in the past, but that doesn't stay relevant now. So you may want to make a change. So those also you need to revisit. When you made, if you made an investment when you were unmarried, you would have nominated somebody. After marriage, you have every right to go back to revisit it and change the nomination, and which you should. So those are all things that.
Nowadays, the banks, even if you are a joint account holder, they are asking us to give a nomination. And also, any investment with a mutual fund or anything, they ask, even if you have a joint, they are asking that nomination.
That is because generally what happens, since you raised this issue on the bank account, both the husband and wife are the people who are the joint holders. Now, in the event that something happens to both, and sometimes it does happen that aged people pass away in short duration of each other, they have not had time to go and revisit the bank and make those changes. So then, again we land up in the same soup. So nowadays, all the banks and all the financial institutions, in spite of joint holders, are insisting on the nomination as well.
Husband and wife is already, then we can add a third person also.
Yes, there are two.
Yeah. First holder, second holder, third holder. You can add a third one also.
That's far more better than a nomination.
It is.
Without any person, third person is going to
But I don't know if you have a third person, if they still insist on a nomination. Are they still insisting?
I don't think so. I don't
know.
I have not encountered it too. If you have 3 people in an account, whether they still insist that you have a nomination, then
My name is Chukapa, but on behalf of all the participants, I would like to thank psychological help what Mr. Sridhar and also financial help what Mr. Babu was doing. Thank you very much. My question is something related to LIC. LIC, as you rightly said, not required for elders. That is agreed. My question is it required for youngsters also now?
See, the purpose of life insurance is to cover a risk. And I'll give you a use case. 32-year-old man, married with 2 children, earning 10 lakhs a year, has recently booked an apartment somewhere. He has a large EMI which he's starting to pay, so on and so forth. Somebody in that use case needs life insurance cover. There is a term insurance which covers only the risk. And the insurance they are on that. Because God forbid something happens to him, the family will forego their house, forego the earning. This man in his lifetime, 10 lakhs inflated over the next 28 years, 32 to maybe 60. He will have a corpus of minimum, his family will enjoy a corpus of something like 3 to 5 crores. If something were to happen to him, the family cannot be denied that corpus. The children will have aspirations to go study, so on and so forth. There is money needed for all of it. So there is a use case for term insurance for younger people that is undeniable. For elder people, I don't think you need it.
Actually, I asked in a different way. I hope you understand.
Okay, this is another. In case of joint account also, I suggest it should be either a survivor. Then only the problem will not be there. So those who are wants to opt for a joint account, always try to put either a survivor. That will reduce your problem. Something happens, any one of the account holder. Thank you.
It's always either a survivor.
No, there is joint, anyone a survivor, either a survivor. He's saying joint, either a survivor is good.
Namaste, doctor and others. During the elder abuse, I come from a senior citizen organization called Progress Club of Chennai. What we try to do is, like this gentleman pointed out, youngsters should come and then attend this meeting. What we do is we want to reduce the gap between the generation. So June 15th is declared as United Nations Elder Abuse Awareness Day. This elder abuse awareness is not only happening in India, it is throughout the world. I also attended an international conference. Things are pretty bad in other countries like India also. What we try to do is, on June 15, like LP doing, go to the schools, ask them to take a pledge that they will not harm the senior citizen. If they see that any senior citizen being harmed, they will try to reduce the thing. Because if they harm the Tata party or Appa Amma, not even Eda Solalam. அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு நம்பிக்கை. இதனால வந்து கம்ப்ளீட்டா எராடிகேட் பண்றது ரொம்ப கஷ்டம். ரெடியூஸ் பண்ணலாம், அவ்வளவுதான் இன்சூரன்ஸ். இவன் நாளைக்கு வந்து அப்பா அம்மா ஆகும்போது அவங்க அப்பா அம்மாவை நல்லா கவனிக்கலாங்கிற ஒரு எண்ணத்துல தான் இது பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம்.
டாக்டர் சொன்ன மாதிரி in some sense, while you cannot eradicate, I think the more we build awareness, the more it will change. And to do that, I think if you can raise the voice and make this part of curriculum of school children, right? And this is not a lot of things. You can do a 2-hour program, and children are very sharp. They will grasp this. 2-hour program once a year, if it's done, and in the form of a skit. Not even like, you cannot talk to kids like this and they will get it. If you do it in the form of an interesting skit or a video or something, it will go like this. It's not difficult, but I think, government has tons of problems. And this becomes the last priority, and somebody needs to bring that priority. I think you mentioned that.
These types of concerns were managed by the joint family. Once that is gone, you have got so many things to take.
எல்டர்ஸ் அபியூஸ் அப்படின்னு பேசுறப்ப நேற்று ஒரு பள்ளிக்கூடத்துக்கு போயிருந்தோம். பெரியவங்களை மதிங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்றாங்க. எப்படி மதிக்கணுன்றதை யாரும் சொல்லி தர மாட்டேங்கிறாங்க. அதை நம்ம பேச ஆரம்பிச்சா கொஞ்சம் நல்லா இருக்கும். இப்ப எனக்கு தெரிஞ்சு ஒருத்தர் தாத்தா ஹெல்ப்லைன்ல தொடர்பு வருவார். அப்ப அவருக்கு 97 வயசு, 97 இயர்ஸ் ஓல்டு, 2 ஒய்ஃபு, 9 பசங்க. அவருக்கு வந்து அவர் கடைசி மகன் வீட்டில் இருக்கிறாரு. மகன் டாக்டரு, மருமக வந்து இன்ஜினியரு. மாசத்துக்கு அவருக்கு கை செலவுக்கு அந்த ஆம்பளை பசங்க மட்டுமே கொடுக்குற காசு 30,000 ரூபாய். அவங்க பெண்கள்லாம் வெளிநாட்டில் இருக்கிறாங்க, படிக்கிறாங்க, வேலை செய்யறாங்க. இவ்வளவு வசதிகள் இருந்தும் அவருக்கு தினமும் காலையில என்ன வேலை அப்படின்னா, எந்திரிச்சோன்னா அவங்க பக்கத்து அந்த பசங்க இருக்கிற வீட்டை ஒட்டி ஸ்டேஷன் போய் கம்ப்ளைண்ட் கொடுக்கறது, எனக்கு கவனிக்கலையே, எனக்கு மரியாதை கொடுக்கல. அப்ப நான் அவர்கிட்ட பேச போறப்ப உங்களுக்கு என்னதையா வேணும், கூட்டுக்கெல்லாம் போறீங்க அப்படின்னு கேட்கறப்ப அவர் என்ன சொல்றாரு அப்படின்னா, மரியாதை வேணும். நான் சொன்ன கோர்ட் ஆர்டர் போட்டா மரியாதை வராது, இன்ஸ்பெக்டர் பக்கத்துல வந்து நின்றா மரியாதை வராது ஐயா அப்படின்னு. அப்ப இந்த தாத்தாவை நம்ம புரிஞ்சுக்கணும்னா அவர் அக்செப்ட் பண்ணி தான் ஆகணும், அவர் என்ன இருக்குன்னு. அந்த மாதிரி நம்ம பேச ஆரம்பிச்சோம்னா நல்லா இருக்கும். வெறும் கட்டிப்பிடி நான் எப்படி கட்டிப்பிடிக்கிறதுன்னு இருக்கு. அந்த மாதிரி நம்ம ப்ரோக்ராம்ஸ் அடுத்து பண்றப்ப எல்டர்ஸை ரெஸ்பெக்ட் பண்றது எப்படி, அவங்களோட சிம்டம்ஸ் என்ன, எப்படி ரிப்பீட் பண்ணுவாங்க, அதை நம்ம எப்படி வந்து அப்சர்வ் பண்ணணும்ன்றதை சொன்னா கொஞ்சம்
மதிக்கிறது. அவங்களோட எதிர்பார்ப்புகள் ஒருத்தருக்கும் ஒரு எதிர்பார்ப்பு இருக்கும். அந்த எதிர்பார்ப்பு வந்து இப்படிதான் எல்லாருக்கும் பண்ணணுங்கிறது வந்து சரி கிடையாது. நம்ம வந்து அவங்களோட தேவை என்னவோ அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி நம்ம அவங்கள ட்ரீட் பண்ற மாதிரி இருக்கும். சில சமயம் அவங்க எதிர்பார்ப்புகள் வந்து அளவுக்கு அதிகமா இருக்கு அப்படின்னு சில பேர் ஃபீல் பண்றாங்க. ஃபேமிலிஸ் வந்து இது எங்களால பண்ண முடியாது, தேவைக்கு அதுக்கு நாங்க எல்லாம் கொடுக்குறோம், இன்னும் ஒரு எதிர்பார்க்கறாங்க அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு சிச்சுவேஷன் இருந்ததுனாக்க எதனால அப்படி இருக்குங்கிறத நாம வந்து பார்க்க வேண்டியது. இது வந்து அந்த வயசானவர்கிட்ட ஏதாவது ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்கா, சில சமயம் அவங்களுக்கு வந்து மனநோய் இருக்கலாம், அவங்களுக்கு டிமென்ஷியா இருக்கலாம். நிறைய கம்ப்ளைண்ட்ஸ் இந்த பெரியவங்க சொன்னாங்க, எனக்கு சாப்பாடே போட மாட்டேங்கிறாங்க, எனக்கு சாப்பாடே கொடுக்கல அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. ஆனா என்ன ஆயிடுற, சாப்பாடு கொடுத்தா மறந்து போயிருப்பாங்க. காலையில சாப்பிட்டுருப்பாங்க, சாப்பிட்டு அரை மணி நேரம் கழிச்சு மறந்து போயிடுவாங்க, மறந்து திருப்பி கேட்பாங்க. அப்போ வந்து வெளியிலேருந்து பாக்குறவங்களுக்கு அவங்களை சாப்பாடே கொடுக்க மாட்டேங்கிறாங்க போல இருக்கு, அவங்க படிக்கவே மாட்டேங்கிறாங்க, சரியா நடத்த மாட்டேங்கிறாங்கன்னு அவங்க புரிஞ்சுப்பாங்க. பட் ஆக்சுவலா என்ன ப்ராப்ளம்னா, இவருக்கு மறதி நோய் இருக்கு, டிமென்ஷியா இருக்கு, அதை கண்டுபிடிக்கல, அதுக்கு நம்ம ட்ரீட்மெண்ட் கொடுக்கல, அதை நம்ம கண்டுபிடிக்கலங்கிறது தான் அங்க பிரச்சனை. அதை வந்து நாம வந்து அவங்க கேட்கும் போதெல்லாம் இப்போ வந்து நம்ம என்ன பண்ணலாம்னா, அதுக்கு ட்ரீட்மெண்ட் ஆரம்பிச்சு அவங்க சாப்பாடு கேட்கறத அவங்க சாப்பிட்டதை மறந்து போயிட்டாங்க அப்படின்னா, நாங்க சில சமயம் சில அட்வைஸ், சிம்பிள் அட்வைஸ் தான். ஒரு ஒயிட் போர்டு வச்சு அதில் அவங்க காலையில் எத்தனை மணிக்கு சாப்பிடணும், மத்தியானம் எத்தனை மணிக்கு சாப்பிடுவாங்க, நைட் எத்தனை மணிக்கு, வெளியே மேலேயே ஒரு கிளாக்கையும் வச்சு அவங்களுக்கு எழுத படிக்க தெரிஞ்சது, கண்ணு தெரியுது, இதெல்லாமும் இஷ்யூஸ் இருக்குங்க. அவங்களுக்கு கண்ணு தெரியணும், எழுத படிக்க தெரியணும், கூட இருக்கிறவங்க யாராவது எழுதணும், இந்த விஷயங்கள்லாம் இருக்கு. இதெல்லாம் அவங்களால பண்ண முடிஞ்சதுன்னா தட் ஸ்ட்ராட்டஜி வில் ஒர்க். சம்டைம்ஸ் சிம்பிள் திங்ஸ் அவங்க வந்து திருப்பி கேட்குறாங்க, பரவாயில்ல கொஞ்சம் கொடுங்க, நீங்கள் வந்து அவங்களுக்கு அந்த நேரத்தில் ஸ்நாக்ஸ் கொடுக்கலாம், காஃபி கொடுக்கலாம். அவங்க வந்து காஃபி நிறைய கேட்டு இருக்காங்க, அடிக்கடி ஒரு நாளைக்கு 10 டம்ளர் காஃபி குடிச்சா எப்படி உடம்புக்கு ஆகுமா அப்படின்னு கேட்பாங்க சில பேர். காஃபியை வீக்காக கொடுங்க. சில சமயம் வந்து டீகாஃபினேட்டட் காஃபி கிடைக்கும், அதை நீங்கள் ட்ரை பண்ணலாம். சமயம் there are different options. So we just need to adapt. ஒருத்தருக்கு என்ன தேவையோ அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி நம்ம அட்ஜஸ்ட் பண்ணிட்டு அவங்க இது பண்ணணும். இதையும் மீறி உங்களுக்கு அபியூஸ் நடக்குது அப்படின்னு தோணுச்சுன்னா அதுக்கு நாம ஆக்ஷன் எடுக்க வேண்டியிருக்கோம் அந்த நேரத்தில்.
There is no straight line that says abuse irka illa அப்படிங்கறது கண்டுபிடிக்க முடியாது. Sometimes the dementia, the patient, like you said, doesn't even remember they've had food. They keep asking. Maybe the family members are doing good, not feeding him, overfeeding him. That creates further problems.
Exactly. So அந்த மாதிரி சிச்சுவேஷன்ல நம்ம வந்து again we need to have a good assessment on the ground assessment. என்ன நடக்குது அங்கங்கிறது நம்ம கொஞ்சம் இன்வெஸ்டிகேட் பண்ணி பார்க்க வேண்டியிருக்கும். பார்த்துட்டு அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி நம்ம பிளான் கொண்டு வர வேண்டும். அதாவது இதுதான் இப்போ எல்லாருக்கும் இப்படிதான், எல்லா வயசானவங்களுக்கும் இப்படிதான் பண்ணுங்கிறது ஒன்றும் கிடையாது. ஒருத்தருக்கு அவங்களுக்கு என்ன தேவையோ அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி நம்ம அட்ஜஸ்ட் பண்ணணும்.
ஹலோ சார், இவர் சொன்ன பாயிண்ட் ஓரளவுக்கு ஐ அக்ரி. அவர் நீங்க சொன்ன இந்த 2 வயசு இருக்கிற அந்த 9 பசங்க, இன்னொன்று கேஸ் எல்லாரும் நம்ம வந்து பாசிட்டிவா இன்டராக்ஷன் பிட்வீன் எல்டர்ஸ் அண்ட் யங்ஸ்டர்ஸ் பண்ணோம்னா, first we should stop alone seeing as the youngsters and the sons and the daughters and alone as the perpetrators. I have seen many cases which is underreported where the elders have been abusive. The youngsters, because of the youngsters' bias against them being bad, have got the blame. They are actually taking more care than the elders gave them. The elders have been abusing them from a younger age and keep abusing them in the name of elders. Lot of this happens. This is unfortunately not brought about. I'm not saying all elders are bad and all youngsters are bad, but idu vandu highlight this too, because lot of youngsters do more for their parents than their parents do for them. In fact, the parents have been misappropriating funds and the youngsters are taking them and taking care of the parents and putting them in place for their abusive behavior, but it appears like the youngsters are abusing them. But for the well-being of the family, the youngsters have been taken. That has not been highlighted. What they have done, doing in action, the end result is seen, but not the cause of the end result. This should also be looked upon. Don't see youngsters only as the perpetrators. Sons and daughters, even sons-in-laws and daughters can be very nasty. It depends on the individual. Let's not take it as a generic case. Because this will put you versus me on the overall. We want a positive outcome or a balanced outcome. Tappa nanikadinga. A lot of abusive elders are there. I know 90 plus people abusive, men and women, and nice youngsters also. Unfortunately, youngsters get the big back. It should not be taken that way. That's a general request. Thank you.
This is one final question. If there is an elder who is losing health because by the dementia or any other chronic illness, how do we help them kind of transfer or get the kind of support they need and create a framework in which they continue to operate in a safe space? Is there anything that you could probably give us tips on?
There is this concept called living well with dementia. Any chronic condition, any chronic illness, there is a concept. See, if you can't cure it, we just need to endure it. We just need to live with it. That is the story. Many of us have hypertension, many of us have diabetes, and we learn to live with it. We need to adapt how we live with the condition that we have. And it's similar with dementia. You know there are certain deficits. You know the person needs certain amount of help. You kind of build it into the care plan. So what we need to do is to have a care plan, a personalized care plan. அதில் வந்து இவரோட தேவைகள் என்ன, இவங்களோட அந்த தேவைகளை எப்படி நம்ம பூர்த்தி செய்யணும். ஸோ அதை வந்து நம்ம பண்ணிட்டோம். அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி we actually build the support that they need. Is there a period of time where they are doing things, the activities that they like doing? Is there an opportunity for them to go and meet people? Okay, so those kind of, if that's what they want to do, so they just need to build into their care plan. So that's what it is.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Dr. Shridhar sir and Babu sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure you'll all agree with me that we've had a wonderful session today. TDCF was started about 3 years ago, and the reason we started it was to create awareness about dementia in the elderly and to handhold the elderly and the families who have been affected by dementia. But in the process, we realized that dementia, it's not enough if we treat dementia as a disease per se. We have to see it has its various manifestations. Inniki discuss pannolya topics on elder abuse and financial planning. So it's so much an integral part of dementia and of the elderly as well. ஒரு வாசகம் நான் படித்தது ரொம்ப நாள் எனக்கு ஒரு ஹைக்கூ கவிதை, ஐ லைக் தீஸ் ஹைக்கூ, சின்ன சின்ன கவிதைகள். அதில் வந்து ஒரு ஹைக்கூ கவிதையில் ஆயுள் தண்டனை பற்றி ஒரு கவிதை. சில பேர்த்துக்கு முதியோர்களுக்கு ஆயுளே ஒரு தண்டனை ஆகிவிடுகிறது அப்படின்னு ஒரு சின்ன கவிதை எழுதியிருந்தாங்க. having three words, Ayule, Ayul Dandanai, Ayule Dandanai, Ayule Dandanaya. This is exactly what I think Dr. Sridhar Vaitheshwaran was discussing with us today on elder abuse and the various forms of elder abuse. Elder abuse does not specifically mean just physical abuse. It can be emotional abuse, financial abuse. The emotional abuse, isolation and அவங்களை கண்டுக்காம விடுறது, தனிமையில் விடுறது, அதே ஒரு பெரிய கொடுமை. So what do we do with all this? Madam கூட கேட்டாங்க, what do we do அப்படிங்கிற போது we have to raise our voice against it, and that was one of the awareness in TDCF. That is what we do, where we go and talk to people and to let you know that there is help available here as well. And we reach out to a lot of people. நாங்க பண்ற camps and awareness, we do all this. And I thank Dr. Sridhar Vaitheshwaran for his time here and giving us an excellent overview of elder abuse and what to do on the elder helplines sir has given us. So in case anybody wants to reach out, please share it with all your your family, friends who might need it as well. Our association with Dr. Sridhar goes a long way, and he has been the Dementia Care Foundation what he would have done has always been in our mind, and there have been many times that we have reached out to him for help. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much for being with us today. And sir, the financial abuse pati sonaru. So I think it was a korvaya adutha speaker Babu Krishnamoorthy sir vandu pesrumbodhu it was apt from his stories of incomplete man, the complete man story la irundhu ராஜஸ்தான்ல தண்ணி வராததுல இருந்து ராமரோட வில்லு வரைக்கும். So he told us about the 7 points, actually 7 point where we need to follow for financial health. When we are all concerned about master health checkup பண்றோம், I mean all of us take care about our health so much, diabetes வந்துச்சா, exercise இதெல்லாம் பண்றோம், but there are a lot of times that we do not take care of our financial health. What happens to our finances, and we have noticed that dementia patients inga varanga, so it is a huge stress on the caregivers as well. So on the time if our finances are strong, if we have planned our finances, it is very, very helpful at that time. And I think we need to do that early, because once dementia sets in, you may not be in a situation to actually plan, actually do what you really want. So thank you, Babu sir. He's a good friend of ours, and we have had a lot of conversations, but today's conversation and talk was really eye-opening and very different. Thank you, Babu, for being with us today. And thank you all. Any ஒரு சபைனா அது நிறைஞ்சிருந்தாதான் அதுக்கு ஒரு அழகு, அதே மாதிரி ஒரு விருந்துனா பெரிய படையல் இருந்தால் தான் அதுக்கும் ஒரு அழகு. So thank you all for being with us. We've seen a lot of our friends from Probus, Helpage India, Ties that Bind Us. Thank you sir for coming, and thank you all, and thank you team, our team from TDCF. They're a very new team, 1.5 months now, but they have really worked to put this together. And thank you all for coming. And just before lunch, please rise for the national anthem. Thank you.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा, विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा, तव शुभ नामे जागे, तव शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तव जय गाथा, जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत